everybody watching right now. This is Shana Hussin. Go check her out. Did I say your last name right? Hussin?
Hussin.
Hussin?
Hussin, yes.
Hussin. Okay. She is a registered dietitian, author, helps you overcome weight and chronic health issues. Go check her out, shana.hussin.rdn. And so yes, I'm going to give a little like behind the scenes. Shana actually interviewed me yesterday as the recording of this. And at the very end, she's like, wow, that was so, oh no. I was like, what happened? I said, I didn't hit record. I said, you know how many times I've done that in my career and I told you a couple of stories. So it's all good. But I said, I got an idea. Why don't you come on the Live and La Vida Low Carb show? Because I think I had you set up already to do that. I said, why don't we do a crossover episode? So you are listening to a crossover episode of the Live and La Vida Low Carb show. And the name of your podcast?
Fast to Heal Stories.
Fast to Heal Story. So you guys go check her out on her podcast. And if you're her listener, thank you for being here today. Why don't you do your opening spiel that you do for your show?
Thanks, Jimmy. And again, thank you so much for recording again. Yes, I was completely mortified. I learned a really hard lesson yesterday. But yeah, so Fast to Heal Stories listeners, I am delighted to have Jimmy Moore here. If you haven't heard of Jimmy, I'd be really surprised because he's been in the keto space and the fasting space for many, many years. He's got best-selling books. What are they? Keto Clarity, Cholesterol Clarity. And what's the third one again? I'm blanking on the third one.
Complete Guide to Fasting.
Oh, yes. Well, that's the one that I've read. I can't believe I blanked on it. Complete Guide to Fasting. It's got the longest standing podcast in the health space. So excited. I am really sad that I botched our interview yesterday because it was so great. But I'm sure Jimmy's going to give us all the golden nuggets that we heard yesterday. Or at least I heard yesterday.
What we found out, Shana, is you and I are on the same page on virtually everything. So I was like, it's going to be easy for us to interview each other. So why don't we take turns asking each other questions and making an answer? So I'll go first.
Perfect.
So you're a dietitian, and dietitian in the keto world has kind of a dirty name associated with it because most of your colleagues in the dietetics world are hopelessly stuck on grains, low fat, and all the rest. You know, you got traditionally trained in that. How did you learn differently than that, and what made you want to learn outside of your training as a dietitian?
Yeah, it's pretty sad because the only reason I went outside of what I was doing was because, number one, I had my own health issues following the standard recommendations, and I followed those for years to a T. You know, I was a distance runner. I ate lots of grains. I ate from the moment I got up in the morning because I thought I had to fuel myself very, very early. I started having bloating issues before I was even a dietitian. And I just thought that was normal for me. I thought, well, I guess I just have a touchy digestive system. I struggled for a long time with my clients. I was in the traditional space, the traditional medical space for 15 years and really saw very little progress. And those people who did see progress, it was for a short time, usually under a year for sure. And then I'd see them out in the community and they had fallen off the wagon per se, but really it was because of the calorie deficit. It wasn't a sustainable method. So I started questioning things when I was about 15 years into the field, and we promoted a lot of vegan-based, vegetarian-based diets, very low-fat diets, very low-sodium diets, and they just weren't working. They weren't sustainable. And I actually left the conventional medicine world about 15 years in, and I was a substitute teacher for 3 years because I just thought, I don't know if what I'm teaching works well. I had gone gluten-free by that point. I wasn't completely grain-free, but I felt way better gluten-free. I started cutting back on grains.
How long ago was that, Shana?
That was about 4 years ago. I've been completely, gluten-free for coming up on 4 years. I just feel better that way. I mean, I'm sure I eat them when we go out to eat and that sort of thing, not purposely, but and then my son got very ill in 2016, and he was ill for 3 years under the conventional medical umbrella of the standard of care and just more medications. He wasn't healing. And that's when I started to just really do a deep dive into nutrition and all things related. And I started listening to podcasts like Dr. Fung's, and I listened to yours, and I listened to all kinds of holistic healing doctors. And I thought there's something to keto. I never went fully keto. I never like counted my macros or anything like that. But I learned so much, and I just thought I was taught all wrong. And then I started implementing fasting with myself, and I did a very small subset of 20 people, 20 clients with intermittent fasting and cleaner eating. And I was blown away at the results, and I couldn't believe it. And that's when I started writing my book and just like, I'm doing this on the side, and my son's been healed for a couple of years. And I'm mortified now I wish I could go back 20 years and know what I know now. I mean, we were taught how we were taught, but, I just feel like the concepts are right there in front of us. They're simple. We're just blind. We're blinded by the system, the food system, and by the medical system.
So you mentioned your book, that you have one, but you didn't give us the title. What is the title of your book?
The title of my book is Fast to Heal. And then the subtitle is a 5-step guide to achieving nutritional peace and reversing insulin resistance. But there's the peace, the nutritional peace. The peace stands for an acronym of the 5 steps. So I lay out the 5 steps in there.
What are
So the P stands for prepare your body. And we talked a lot about this yesterday in our interview that we lost. But I talk a lot about just preparing for fasting and cleaner eating, because fasting's a stressor. And if you've never done it before, you definitely want to prepare with cleaner eating.
Heard.
And then just getting some of those getting your carbohydrates down, getting the processed foods out, so that when you do extend fast, which is the E part, is extend fast, it makes it easier. You can adapt quicker. And so in extend fast, we talk all about the different types of fasting, which ones you could try, what to do if you get stuck, that sort of thing. And everybody's different. And I talk about that in the book. And if you're very, very ill, you're going to start with a different protocol than it really depends on what your goals are. And then the A is for alter nutrition. So then we go back and we say, okay, if something's not working for you, or if you're still not feeling well, if you still have issues, what can we do? What can we tweak? Because not everybody can follow the same diet. What works for me is not going to work for the next person. And some people feel okay eating a higher amount of carbohydrates, and some people cannot tolerate hardly any. It just depends on the person.
Yes.
And, it's just funny that we base our diet on carbohydrates when they're the only macronutrient that is not necessary.
Wait, you mean there's bio-individuality from person to person too?
Concept, right? So that's the A, and then the C part is for clean, challenge, and change. And that's where we really go back and say, are you clean fasting? Is something getting in the way of the progress that you want to make? What is that? We look at, water and salt. And then we look at challenge days. Like, do we need to throw a challenge day in there? If somebody's only ever done 16 or 18 hours of fasting, and they're very metabolically ill, do we need to challenge you to spread that a little bit longer and see how you do? And then change is for changing things up, because sometimes we just get stuck in the rut of doing the same things over and over and getting the same results. We need to change things up. And then the E part is for ease your mind. And that's where we talk about sleep and stress, and how we really... Yes, it's like stress can get in the way of progress. Sleep deprivation too is so important, that you get a good night's sleep, because otherwise your cortisol is running high the next day. And if you're chronically sleep deprived, those things just get in the way. So those are the 5 steps. So it kind of comes full circle.
You have just outlined in very simple terms and very easy to remember language the meaning of a good quality life. Like literally everything you did. It's not just really about health. It's literally totality of your body, mind, soul, everything. Like people like to make diet, which is what dietitians learn primarily, all about, well, I need to lose weight. I need to change my this. I need to change some health marker. No, no, no. You're changing everything about you. This is what I love about your work. I didn't know you that long ago, but I'm loving what you say and how you say it. And the extended part, the E in there, the extending your fast, as you know, as we're recording this, I'm approaching 120 hours of fasting in a row. So I'm sure you have a question about that.
Absolutely. So you're on day 5, correct?
Yeah, about to turn to 6 in about an hour.
Yeah, and I did go into Clubhouse, the platform that you invited me into, and I listened to your talk yesterday,
Yep.
and all of the people that were doing that with you. So that's amazing. So yeah, tell us about, maybe just a little bit about your backstory if people aren't as familiar, and then yeah, where you are now. We'll just jump right into the extended fasting concept, and you tell us, what you're doing now, what day you're on, and how it's been going for you.
Yeah, so to go back in my story, and my fans know this, but we're on your show. Again, this is a crossover episode, you guys. I like breaking new ground, doing things that are different. So Shana was very gracious to let me come on her platform and vice versa. I have you on mine. So this is fun today. Thank you for this. But yeah, in 2003, was a sugar carb addict to the hilt. I had, for many years, been heavily addicted to carbohydrates, to the point of drinking like 16 cans of Coca-Cola a day, having like whole boxes of Little Debbie snack cakes at a time. Literally, I'd throw them in the freezer and then pull them out right before watching TV. But come in here with the Swiss rolls frozen. They're not really frozen. They had a bite to them. And I'd sit there and just scarf them back to back to back to back. And what's funny, I never questioned that because I didn't realize that was my chosen drug to deal with hurt in my past. And so many people turn to drugs, alcohol, sex, you name it. They do all kind of destructive things. So for me, it was what I like to refer to now as crappy garbage. And so I ate the crappy garbage. I had those Little Debbie snack cakes. I'd go to McDonald's a couple of times a day. I'd go to 7-Eleven and I'd buy the cookies and the hot dogs, and I just was stuffing. And never, this is the funny part, all those calories, never feeling satisfied, ever.
Right.
Because I wasn't trying to feed myself nutrition. I was trying to cover the pain and the hurt. And we can get into that later. We didn't get into that in yesterday's. I definitely want to talk about that if you want to go there. But yeah, so circa 2003, Christmas time, I get a diet book for Christmas. And I'd gotten that a few times. It's like by the way, don't do that. That's kind of rude. But give a
right.
book
unless you ask for it, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like you asked for it.
I did not. But in this case, I was grateful that in December 2003, I got Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution. Now, I had heard of the Atkins Diet a few years back. My brother in 1999 had some heart attacks that almost killed him. It did eventually kill him 8 years later. And he died at the age of 41. But I wanted to get healthy in late 90s. And so I went on an ultra low fat diet, cut out all the fat, and basically looked on all the packages for anything that said fat free or low fat. So a bag of marshmallows, Shanna, did you know it's naturally fat free?
Absolutely. I mean, sugar's fat free, so there's that.
Naturally fat free. Oh, well, that must make it healthy. Let's eat those. And I'd eat 4 or 5 of those at a time. Oh, okay, I'm good. Or the naturally low fat food on the Twizzlers. I used to get those little twist ones, the little red twist ones, and I'd pull the string and I'd have fun with it because it was fat free. And it was ridiculous to the point that Coca-Cola was also fat free, and I would drink the Coke. Now, mind you, hypocaloric state, I lost weight, but I was not happy. I was not healthy. I was angry all the time, irritable. I now know my brain was starving for fat. Your brain is 70% fat, and I was literally starving it of the very thing it needs. So when you don't eat enough fat, it has ramifications that it's going to make your brain scream, please eat fat. This is why the fat phobia in America, I think, coincides perfectly. I did not make this point on our interview yesterday. Fat phobia has made America mental. Think about that.
I totally agree. It made me mental. I mean, when I was so focused on low fat eating, that was when I was my unhealthiest, and that's when I struggled with my weight. And all I thought about was food. I'd look at recipe books and I'd say, oh, that looks amazing. But nope, I would never prepare any of that because there was fat in it.
Yeah, and so that being scared of that fat, for whatever the reasons, most of the reasons are people think it's going to raise their cholesterol, give them heart disease. That's the main reason. Some people think it's an overconsumption of calories, so they cut it out for that reason. There's all kinds of reasons you cut it out. And then the vegans like to say, well, you're hurting animals when you eat animal food. So there's a lot of forces that make people fear fat, but there's never been any science that supports that notion. Anyway, so I lost a lot of weight doing that low-fat diet, but I couldn't sustain it. And 9 months in, I had lost triple-digit weight, but I'm like, I'm starving. I'm going to go, because I've been really good. I've done very well on this. I'm going to go to McDonald's, and I'm going to have a meal there just this one time. Well, that's code for I'm about to binge. And I did. I binged for the next 3 or 4 months, and I gained all of that weight back because it's not sustainable. And so at that point, I said, screw diets. Nothing works. I can't do this. And I remember in the midst of my weight loss on that journey, people are like, oh, you must have done the Atkins diet, because it was kind of popular in the 90s before the 2000s. It really exploded. And I'm like, no, I would never do a low-carb diet. Atkins, famous last words, because 5 years later, what did I do? Go on the Atkins diet. So yeah, I read Dr. Atkins' book after getting it as a Christmas present. But I was like, whoa, like cut your carbs, eat more fat. This is the antithesis of everything I heard was healthy. But the guy that wrote it's cardiologist. Why not? Let's give it a go. So January 1st, 2004, my weight loss resolution or my New Year's resolution was to lose weight. And it ended up being a new life resolution to get healthy very quickly. Now, it was tough in the early days. We talk about those things all the time. You kind of get through those first few days, but it was really tough for Jimmy. I've never taken drugs in my life, but if I've ever been on crack cocaine or morphine and tried to get off of those things, I think I understand the addictiveness, because I went from about 1,500 to 1,600 grams of carbohydrate between sugar and refined grains, the whole shebang, to 20 total grams of carbs in like one day.
Yeah. I mean, you must have lost some major water during that time.
Yeah.
You had some good flushing going on.
The first week I did lose 14 pounds. So
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredible water loss that first week. And then it slowed down after that. I lost 30 pounds the first month, 40 pounds the second month.
Wow.
And the end of the days, it was 100 pounds lost in 100 days. And I was just like, wow, something about this is interesting. Like,
and that was doing like the 20 carbs or less.
Yeah,
okay.
I stayed 20 grams pretty much the whole year until I met my health goals, and then I started tinkering with the climbing the carb ladder, the Atkins. I think finding your carb tolerance is such tricky business, because it's going to change over time. You can climb the carb ladder now at 30, but then by 50, that carb ladder might be different. And your insulin resistance might have healed. I've learned so many things since that initial weight loss that it's always this kind of science experiment on myself. Okay, what about red light therapy? What about an infrared sauna? What about doing ice baths? What about doing like HIIT training? Like, you always just kind of going, how can I refine this vessel that I've now paid attention to for the first time in my life? No longer stuffing Coca-Cola down my throat, stuffing Little Debbie snack cakes. I'm not interested in any of that. I want real food that nourishes my body. And what else can I do that will enhance the benefits of that food that I eat?
Right. Now, when you were doing the low fat, did you also have a calorie restriction, or were you just mainly honed into the fat? Because obviously you're removing an entire macronutrient group, so the calories, but were you also calorie restricted?
Well, think about it. By default, it's calorie restriction, because 9 calories, as you well know, I'm teaching the audience, 9 calories for each gram, and protein and carbohydrate only have 4. So you would have to eat a voluminous amount of protein and carbohydrate in the absence of fat. And I think I probably, Shanna, kept my fat calories below 10 a day.
Yeah.
I literally ate nothing that had more than 1 gram of fat in it. I was fat phobic. And so, yeah, so I think by default it was low calorie, not that I was purposely counting them.
Right. And I was right there with you, because at that same time, that was when I was very fat phobic, like late 90s, early 2000s, probably more the 90s. By the 2000s, I had come around to at least know that some fat was healthy. But I remember as dietitians, we would, anytime anybody would mention the Atkins diet, we'd be like, oh, the Atkins diet. No, don't go there. You know, if we had like a client come in and say, or a patient say, oh, I'm trying to say Atkins, we're like, no, you don't do it. Like maybe a couple of weeks, but don't do that long term. And then meanwhile, a client or a patient would come in and be like, hey, I found this fat-free Cool Whip. It doesn't have, it has less than 1 gram of fat in it. So I'm like having it for my dessert. And we're like, hey, cool. Where did you get it? Let me go get that. And, I was eating, like you said, Twizzlers was one of my favorite. Pretzels, crappy, no-fat pretzels.
Yep.
Diet Coke. And then I would eat like cherry and apple pie filling out of the can because it was fat-free. So we thought that was healthy as dietitians, even though we had been taught in school about biochemistry and the substrates that you need, but we weren't taught a lot about like hormonal health. We were taught a lot about like energy, like how to burn energy, what are the substrates you need, what did the different vitamins and minerals, but we did not learn barely anything other than what you learn in human physiology. What your hormones are doing, how they talk to each other, and how your food and intake affect those, like virtually zero.
And it's shocking to people, Shanna, when I tell them medical doctors did not get that training either. You would think at least nutritionists and dietitians would have some semblance of kind of the mechanisticness of the hormonal effect, the whole endocrine system, and understanding, okay, when you have this, it's going to impact this system. And it all leads from insulin on down to all your hormones and everything. None of that. And doctors, no, them neither. So like, this is a brokenness in the system, both the nutrition, the people being schooled in dietetics like you, and people being schooled in medicine like doctors and PAs and even nurses on down the line. It's no question in my mind how we got into the real pandemics that are out there, which is heart disease, diabetes, obesity. I could go on down the list of all these things that, but for the education being messed up at the beginning, you could actually prevent a lot of these things. Because if you understood insulin resistance, if you understood, well, this food will impact this hormone and will impact this in your health over time. Like if we could get doctors, dietitians, and everyone else talking about this all on the same page, we wouldn't have these issues anymore.
Right. And the problem is, like, even if we did learn it in schooling, which we didn't, like I said, whatever I learned in human physiology, the basic human physiology in the endocrine system, that's what we learned. But even so, once you get out into the dietetics field and you start seeing patients, you have a folder with handouts for this disease state. And then if, like say diabetes, you give them this education. If they have heart disease, you give them this education. And it's all coming down from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics.
Yeah.
And that system is flawed. And we're told, like, everybody's under this umbrella term. If they have this disease state, this is how you treat them with nutrition therapy. You don't look at them individually. And then, holy crap, if there's more than one disease state, then it's like, oh my gosh, now I have to restrict this and this and this and this. And it's just like not asking questions about what foods do you react to? What makes you feel well? No, it's like, okay, you have heart disease. This is how I'm going to educate you. And you went down the line of the bullet points and you sent them on their merry way. And then you wondered why they didn't lose weight and get better.
See, to me, that's no way to treat a patient, a client. Like, we are individualistic. Like, look at the patient, look at their eyes, like hear them talk, or in your case, the client, hear what they crave, hear what they say, because it gives you clues. And it's so much more than just treating people like lemmings, which is what the Dietary Guidelines for Americans has done to us since 1980. And let's not get started on how flawed those were from the very beginning. Like all this research, Shanna, on sugar was being squelched, and then all this negative research, positive research, or about saying how bad sugar was for you, and then all this positive research on saturated fat specifically being benign in your health. Oh no, we can't have that out there. We need to make sugar look good, fat look bad. And then it got taken all the way to policy now, which we just had the new dietary guidelines for 2020 come out, and it's not that much different than the original 40 years ago.
Super disappointing. I was so disappointed, and that's why I scan them and I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. The saturated fat is still limited. The added sugar, I think, went down by a tad.
Yeah, but added sugar, nobody even knows what added sugar.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. It's like we're not focused in on what nutrients and what nutrition we actually need. There's nothing on there that talks about bioavailability or how well you absorb different foods, plant foods versus animal foods, because the bioavailability in animal foods is so much higher than plant foods, but nothing. I mean, there's nothing. It's just these very, not random's not the word I'm looking for, but just very basic.
Well, propagandist is what I would say, because it's all these talking points that serve the pharmaceutical companies and the food companies the best. The first 3 words of that should have said, eat real food. That should always be the basis of any good diet. And if we're going to make recommendations to people, that should be in big block letters at the top of the recommendations. Eat real food. And then from there, okay, maybe give some people options. That's kind of my thinking is, why do we have to have such a monolithic look at dietary guidelines? It's like, we're not monolith. Like, your metabolism is far different than mine. And I know you asked about fasting, and we'll get back to that in a minute, but this is so fascinating. This is the fun part of doing a crossover episode. We both have so many things we want to ask each other. So, but right. Like this dietary guidelines thing, that it needs to get apart from the USDA, because the USDA is the United States Department of Agriculture. So I wonder what they're going to push on people. No wonder we have healthy whole grains. They were never healthy, but that's the vernacular that's out there. And vilifying fat makes you eat more grains and eat more sugar and eat more all of these foods that we know are very profitable commodities. And so if they can make a profit off of you eating these foods that they know aren't healthy for you, and yet under the guise of them being healthy for you, there's no bigger ruse that's ever been put on America.
Right. And another one of the guidelines is limit processed foods. It's like, well, what does that mean? Limit that to what? Like, what limit processed foods to me is very different than my sister or whoever it is looking at that. And then if we're going, this is a whole nother topic, but the all foods in moderation approach, it's like, well, what is moderation? Because moderation for me is maybe 1 Diet Coke every 3 months, where moderation for the next person might be, if you were addicted to Coke, going from 12 Cokes to 3 Cokes a day. It's like, well, that's not moderate. Yeah. It is for you, but it's still not a healthy approach, and it's still not going to heal your underlying issues. So that's where I take, like, the whole food in moderation thing has got to go as well, because it's not individualized, and it's just very simplistic, and there's no finite anything to any part of it.
Moderation is an excuse to continue your addiction.
Exactly.
I'm really convinced. They say eat in moderation, just don't eat too many. And also, we're on so many hot topics we did not hit yesterday. Also, the calorie thing is the same way. The only reason they focus so hyper on calories, and I know it was big in your dietetics teaching, is because when you talk about calories, you remove all the hormonal effects of that food. 1,000 calories of a ribeye steak is far different than 1,000 calories of Coca-Cola. And yet, in the eyes of calories, they're equivalent.
Absolutely. And that's what we were taught. That's what I taught in my first job. calories are the power. As long as you're under this amount of calories, you will lose weight. And of course, we went into the whole food guide pyramid, eat this many servings of this and this and this, but the protein and the fat were at the top. And of course, we were teaching people to eat seed oils at that point in time, the inflammatory, eat your corn and your canola. And we were also teaching olive oil, which is more moderate, but yeah, it was craziness. So yeah, let's get back to your extended fast and fasting and day 5. That is admirable. The longest fast I've done is 3 days. So I know you've been at this for a long time, and I don't want our listeners to be like, holy moly, like 5 days, that's a long time. But at the same time, it's very interesting to hear from someone who's done a lot of long fasts to tell us, like, they're not all the same. Like, some you're going to just fly right through, and some are going to be a huge challenge. So yeah, tell us about your kind of your fasting background and your extended fast that you're on right now.
Yeah, so I used to refer to a fast as the other F word, because it is a 4-letter F word. Literally,
yes,
it's and so I remember it was back in 2008, maybe 7, when I interviewed on this show, the Live and La Vida Low Carb Show, Dr. Michael Eads. He wrote a book called Protein Power with his wife, Dr. Mary Dan Eads, and he mentioned in there about IF. He said, if you just implement IF with low carb eating, that's a very effective strategy for fat loss, and da 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 da. He was giving all the benefits. And I'm like, what is if? What if? What? He said, oh, intermittent fasting, and I was like, I heard starvation when he said that phrase.
And this is 13 years ago. Like, now, almost everybody has at least heard of intermittent fasting, but it was not a thing then.
It was kind of a thing. There was this guy named Brad Pilon, had a book called Eat, Stop, Eat. I interviewed him on this show. And there were several other fasting-ish people out there, definitely all intermittent, none of them these long fasts. And so a couple of years after I interviewed Mike Eads, I had a cancer researcher, Dr. Thomas Seyfried out of Boston College, on my show. So this would have been about 2008-9. And I was interviewing him about ketogenic diets and cancer and da-da-da. And at the end of the interview, I was like wrapping up. And he said, if you want to prevent cancer, once a year, go on a 7 to 10 day water fast. He said distilled water, but I think you need some minerals in there as well. But he said at the time, distilled water fast, and you'll prevent cancer if you do that once a year, 7 to 10 days. So I was just like, you're kind of new to podcasting. You're going to hear things from a guest that you go, whoa, that was profound. And I was just like dumbfounded for like 3 seconds. I was like, so that's all the time we have today for Living to Be Loved. I didn't know what to say because it was just so profound, but it stuck with me to the point that I reached out to Dr. Seyfried after, and I said, I want to try that. I've never done more than maybe 36 hours of fasting, 24 or 36. And I said, I want to try it. So I jumped from doing these kind of intermittent fasting, because I dabbled with it once Mike put it on my radar screen, and I didn't like it, but I was like, all right, I'll figure it out. And I was always tinkering. And this is the lesson for your listeners. Always kind of tinker with things. Don't get intimidated that Jimmy Moore's doing a 7-day fast right now, maybe longer. I've done 3 21-day fasts. Don't think, oh my gosh, 21, I could never do that. I didn't jump to 21 on day 1. I started with, it's an F word. It sucks. No. And then I went, okay, I can do 12 hours. I can sleep and then kind of extend the fast a little longer to 12 hours. Okay, then, I can do 2 meals in a day and eat within like a window, 6 to 8 hour window. I could eat 1 meal a day and do OMAD. Now I'm feeling more comfortable. And like right now, I'm finishing up day 5, about to enter day 6 of my goal of at least 7 days. And so you work your way up. It's like a muscle. You almost kind of like flex that muscle, and you're building that muscle, and you go a little bit more. I'm setting new PRs every time that I fast, because you just build upon the last time. If you went 72 hours last time, build it. Try to do 5 days this time. If you do 5 days, try to do 7 days. Now, let me put something out there. I don't think everybody needs to extend fast. That's for people that are trying to enhance brain health, You can get most of the autophagy benefits from a 3-day fast every once in a while. You don't need to do it every week. Don't do it every week, month. Maybe once a quarter, like a 3 to 7 day fast is probably good. Is that what you recommend?
Yeah, that's what I was doing them quarterly. And then as we talked yesterday, like 2020, I didn't do, I think I did a couple 2-day fasts.
Yes.
But yeah, I have a
2020.
3-day one on my radar again in the next couple,
Yeah.
at least 3 days, and I'll see if I can keep going. But it's always nice to pull people from my support group because they always will do them with me.
Yeah.
And that's always great.
That's why I do the public one. So right now I'm leading it on Clubhouse and Instagram, a public 7-day fast. And I've had people reach out, oh my gosh, I never thought about fasting. This is exciting, because they love the vibe of a community doing it together, which is why I love doing them. I tried to do one of these in 2020, by the way. 2020 is forever going to be a cuss word. So man, that 2020, we're going to like use it as a pejorative from now on. But I tried one in July last year to lead a corporate one. So here I am, public figure, trying to lead a corporate fast of 7 days, and I white knuckled to get just to 30 hours. I was under so much stress with all the everything of last year, plus a personal issue. It was too much. And that's a lesson in this too. Don't do this if you're not ready for it, and listen to your body. My body was screaming, this is not the time, Jimmy. So no, I didn't fast all last year either, other than intermittent. I do that in my sleep. It's easy to intermittent fast. But these long fasts, yeah. So I'm responding well to this one and got through the toughest part. So yeah, I feel great. I'm about to enter day 6. I'm obviously extremely energetic on screen with you here. I'm somewhat lucid, I hope. So.
No, you're just as energetic as you were yesterday when we talked. So day 4, you said, was kind of the magic point, which would have been yesterday. So day 5, are you still feeling the same?
Yeah. If anything, it's hard to describe, because you have this euphoria is a word that's used often. I almost feel like I'm kind of floating in the air. It's kind of weird. Like, it's not uncomfortable. It's kind of a new sensation that if you've never been to this point in a fast, you can't really put your finger on it. It's almost just like you're kind of like this ethereal creature just kind of floating around. And not that I'm in any pain, I'm in any discomfort. It's just this sense of peace, calm. Now I know why a lot of religions, and Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, all of them preached fasting, because they knew once you got to this point, it's almost spiritual. It's almost like a release of tension out of your body. And physiologically, we could nerd out on autophagy and all the things that are happening internally, but the spiritual kind of aspect, whether you're religious or not, is irrelevant. The release, kind of all these tension, it's amazing, Shanna.
Now, are you having any like hunger or cravings at this point?
So I've done a lot of these, and I did write a book about this, so I will mention Really Got the Fat. That's what got me really
excellent book. Yeah.
Thank you. In 2015, I was one of there was a medical doctor, Jimmy Moore, medical doctor, on this stage in South Africa. So I was very honored. And one of the medical doctors there was Dr. Jason Fung. And he gave a talk about fasting and some of the benefits and things. And I was already heavy into like wanting to learn more about this. And he talked about extended fasting. And I was like, I went up to him afterwards. I said, and I'd already written Keto Clarity and some other best-selling books, so I was an established author. I said, has anybody written a book about extended fasting? Because I would love to learn more, He said, no. I said, you want to write the book together with me? And that's how that book came about. So, yeah, so I had to test my body's ability to fast. So I did some longer fasts. I did 21 days, 3 different times, just to see what it was like. And I made all the mistakes. I thought I needed bone broth. I thought I needed, this, that. You just need water, salt. That's what I've come to the conclusion. If you're going to do an extended fast, the best way to mitigate all the everything that could be a confounding variable is to just stick to water and salt, maybe some other things. I use these little keto chow fasting drops, which is sodium and magnesium in there. But for the most part, the salt, the Redmond's real salt, is what I use, and then some water, and I'm good to go. And so, yeah, by this point in the fast, it's just so good but you've got to get through the hell of the first couple of days. Day 1 is pretty easy. It's pretty much OMAD, like keto. Day 2, 3, your body's just going, okay, you're changing something. I'm not sure what you're doing up there, but I'm going to send you some signals because you're not treating us very well right now.
Yeah.
And it just like shakes you. I think what's happening there, Shana, is your body's trying to make the decision. We have fuel sources available, even if you're keto. We have fuel sources available. You can be a little bit of a glucose burner, or we can be a ketone burner, but you're stuck in that middle position. Again, even if you come into a keto, never come into it from a SAD diet unless you love pain. But even with keto, yes, always go keto before you go on a fast, because you will feel pain. But I think you're stuck in that moment until you move to like day 3, 4, when the glucose does not become preponderant and the ketones do. That's why the nirvana. So ketones will go up commensurately with the blood glucose coming down. And it makes sense, right? Like the ketones would step in the place of that glucose. So that's why you get that energy boost. That's why my brain feels like it's firing on all cylinders, because it is. It's fueled primarily by ketones. I'm not bringing in any food, so I don't really have glucose much at all happening in my body. Now, are you eating? This is something that comes up. People are like, how do you not eat? I said, I am eating. My body's eating itself. That doesn't mean eating the muscles. It means cleaning up those proteins in there. Those little dead proteins just float around. There's no way to eliminate it except through fasting. That's autophagy. There's also stored body fat. So if you have, even the leanest person has some stored body fat that it can tap into to survive while you're doing fasting. So big fan of it. I will probably extend this beyond 7 days if I feel as good on Sunday when it's at 7 days as I do right now. Why would I end it? Now, eventually you do end it, and we can talk about ending a fast soon. But yeah, I love it. And once you do it, it's like riding that bicycle. And once you get on the bicycle, I haven't ridden a bicycle like in 25 years. I'm sure if I pop back on one, I'd be a little wobbly at first, but I'd be right back on it again.
Absolutely. So that was my next question. Tell us how you plan to break your fast, or how you go about breaking longer fasts, because I made many mistakes in my first 3-day fast. I fasted from Monday, Thursday to Easter Sunday. I thought, okay, this is a good time to do it for religious purposes. Plus I can tie in an extended fast. And we had Easter here at my house. So we had a bunch of guests over and lots of food. And I think I started out with some nuts and some other things. And by the time we had Easter brunch, I was running to the bathroom like every half an hour to an hour all day long. I mean, I was cleaning house, but I went about it wrong, and I woke up my digestive system way too quickly, and I paid the price for it.
Yes. So there is this thing, and we put this in our book. There is this thing called refeeding syndrome.
Yes.
Look it up, guys, because that's what you experienced. When you bring in food too much too fast without priming your stomach first, you're just asking for it. And your gastrointestinal system's going, WTF, like literally, what are you doing to me? So here's how you break a fast safely. So there's different schools of thought. But the main thing you want to do is before you end the fast, maybe about an hour before you end the fast. So whenever you think you're going to end it, about an hour before, have something a little bit on your stomach. So a lot of people love bone broth because it's gut healing and it is nutrition and it will kind of wake things up. A few almonds, but maybe not a boatload of them, or some kind of other nut, a small salad, anything that's just a couple hundred calories worth of nutrition. And its goal is to go back into your body and wake up the stomach, bring the blood flow back to the stomach again, because you've given it a week to rest, or however long you've fasted to rest. So you need to wake it up. Okay, it's time to get up, honey.
Wake it up gently.
Yes, we got to go to school today.
Yeah, like mom coming to wake up kids for school versus dad. Dad flips the light on and says, get up. And mom just pets the head and says, let's gently. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I love that. I'm going to use that from now on. Thank you for that. So then when it comes time to eat, you think, okay, I haven't eaten for a long time. I'm going to be ravenous. But here's the funny thing. Whatever normal amount of food you think you're going to be able to eat, cut it in to a third to a half. I usually can't eat more than about a third to a half of what I normally would eat in a meal. So if that's, a couple of hamburgers as a meal, I'm just throwing that out there arbitrarily. I could probably only eat one, maybe not even the full one. I did that one time. Like when I got done with a fast, I thought, okay, I've eaten as many as 3 hamburgers. Let me make 2. I couldn't even get done with the one. So it's because, people say, well, your stomach shrinks, and it kind of does, but it's different. Like your body's almost like, all right, you've adapted us to see fasting as normal. And we're used to tapping into this stored body fat and doing all the process. Now you're changing gears on the skin. Dude, make up your mind. What are you going to do? But once you make that practice and you break that fast, you'll go to sleep that night. You'll wake up the next day. And here's the funny thing, Shannon, you've done this. You wake up the next day. What do you want to do? Fast. It's the craziest thing because you would think, I haven't eaten in a long time. Like if I do end this on Sunday and I have my food, I'll probably not eat the rest of the day after having that little bit of food. And then I'll wake up the next day and what will I want to do? Not eat. It's the craziest thing. And people, they don't believe you. They think fasting just makes you progressively hungrier. If I was hungry, I would be irritable right now. And I'm about to enter day 6 of a fast. I'm not irritable. I'm calm. I'm chill. I'm having a good time talking to you on my show and on your show. Like this is what fasting looks like.
Well, and I have to wonder if you weren't on a long extended fast, if you would have agreed to do another interview with me or not.
Because that's my heart. But would I be energetic? Because it's like, okay, I've already done this one time. But you're right. Like it does make you happy. It gives you peace. And I don't know. I don't want to oversell the benefit, but I don't think you quite know till you feel what I'm feeling right now and what you felt, and so many people watching, they know because they've been there.
Well, and it's the same premise as once you start eating, you don't want to stop eating. Like if you're not in a regular faster, or if you haven't experienced going long periods of time without eating, or even if you sometimes I start eating earlier in the day than I usually do, I just want to eat all day then. So I can understand how, and I felt this too, when you're used to fasting and then you eat, it's like, well, I felt great on my fast. And I feel great when I fast, other than hunger coming and going. I never have like a crash in energy. I'm always exercising in a fasted state because I usually just do intermittent fasting. I just throw some extended fasts in there every couple of months. But for the most part, eating is the same way. It's like you open that window and then, oh man, I just want to eat all day.
Well, and think about it ancestrally. We think fasting is weird. They think keto is weird. I mean, let's be real. But if you look ancestrally, what did they do? They would have animal kills. They would eat the whole animal. They would usually go for the fattiest part of the animal, the brain and all the different organs, everything first. They would probably just throw away the lean meats. I remember interviewing Sally Fallon from the Weston A. Price Foundation, and she's like, oh yeah, in ancestral days, they would eat the fattiest part of the animal, throw away the lean meats because they knew they were useless to them. And then between those animal kills, what did they do? They had to fast 7, 20, 40 days at a time. How did they do that? Because they were so fat fueled from that big animal kill, and they'd stuff themselves with it because they didn't have refrigeration to keep it around and have a barbecue every night for the next 2 months. No, they had to eat as much of it as fast as they could and then go have another animal kill. And how did they have the energy to do the animal kill? They were fat adapted. They were able to extend fast and be completely energized. It's amazing when you think about it from that standpoint. But today we have such food availability. Within a 1-mile radius of my house, I have about 20 restaurants. I've got 5 grocery stores. There's convenience stores galore. I have food availability. And even right now, people often say, well, fasting is just starving yourself. No, starving yourself is you're hungry, you have no food availability, and you can't do anything about it. That's starving. I am 10 feet away from my refrigerator over there, and it's got delicious, and I've got backyard chicken, eggs, I've got cheese and meats and all kinds of things in there. It's right there. But what am I doing? I'm choosing to keep fasting because I have a purpose in mind and I'm in complete control. This is something that people don't understand. Fasting is not starvation. Fasting is you in complete control of your choices. And if I ever felt bad, in the salt was getting my throat, sorry. If I ever felt bad in the midst of this fast, I have the ability to say enough, and I just go in there and eat. So I hate that there's so many negative connotations when, historically speaking, fasting has been a part of our world for millennia.
Yeah, it's the oldest therapy known to man. So, and I think people get so bothered with the term fasting because they're primarily sugar burners and they've never gone even a day without 3 meals a day or eating 6 times a day.
Yeah.
And it's just so bothersome that they can't. And I know I was the same way. I was like, skip breakfast? No, like that is the most important meal of the day. We've got to get our metabolism going. I bought into all of that because that's what we were taught as a culture. And that's what we were taught as nutrition professionals as well. So yeah, people, sugar burners, they're not going to understand until they start transitioning into fat burning.
Yeah, and that's the problem is they look at people like you and me as quacks because they're looking at us as sugar burners. They don't know what it's like to be a keto adapted, fat adapted being. And so when you look at it through that prism, same with like health markers. Oh my gosh, wow, your LDL is so bad. I'm like, do you understand how it works with people that shift their metabolism to more fat burning? You're going to have lower triglycerides, higher HDL, and maybe higher LDL in some hyper responders. But it's not a bad LDL in that context. But all they see is the LDL through their eyes that then tells them. And same with blood sugar. When you go on a fast, for example, some people doing this fast with me this week, Shana, they've told me like 40s, like upper 40s for their blood sugar, but their ketones are like 7, 8. And it's like, that's normal because they feel fine too. So there's no hypoglycemia. They don't feel bad. And so, but in the context of seeing a 40 number as a dietitian, you go,
right
now, because it's out of context of what they were trained in. This is why I think vilifying ketosis was a major mistake by both the medical associations and the dietetic associations.
Well, and primitive humans probably had blood sugars in their 40s all the time because they were burning both ketones and glucose for fuel, or primarily ketones. So it's like, when you look at like, how did we even standardize and normalize labs and blood counts and those types of things when we, as primitive humans, we have no idea what they were experiencing at that point in time. So it's all irrelevant in so many circumstances. So tell us about your approach to nutrition now. I know you're on a fast right now, and hopefully, I mean, you're so voiced in this that you can talk about food, and it's okay. It's okay. I know my first couple of longer fasts, I'm like, no, don't talk to me about food. Now I can go and prep meals for my family. It doesn't bother me because you're used to more of the fat burning.
You want to know how hardcore I've been during the midst of long fasts? I was in day like 12, 13 of a 21-day fast, and I cooked a family member bacon. Are you impressed?
Yes, because I could eat a whole package of bacon in one.
Yeah. So my approach to nutrition, it's funny because it started with the Atkins diet. Didn't really care about food quality. It was all about counting carbohydrates, not calories. And then over time, it kind of shifted to like a low carb paleo because I was getting interested in the paleo kind of concept, but from a low carb standpoint. And eating real food. And then from there, it kind of refined a little more to eating low carb, but for ketosis. How can I institute ketogenesis happening, which is how Keto Clarity came about. And then from there, keto just kind of became, all right, slowly I was dropping things that were irrelevant to me. And so I found that by the time I dropped things, I was eating kind of a keto carnivore. And so that's where I live today. I've been there for about 3 years. mainly meats and eggs. I'm not a purist about it. If I want an avocado, damn it, I'm going to have an avocado.
Mm-hmm.
If I want something off plan, I don't see carnivore as a plan. I see it as a template for the way I eat most of the time. And if every once in a while I want some nuts, I'm going to have some nuts. I'm not going to have a big deal about it. So I'm not a purist about it, and plus I'm eating to satiety and intuitively, but it's because I know my own body now. I know how I feel well. I know I can incorporate these periods of intermittent fasting, these periods of long fasting with that kind of nutrition. And I think people often ask me what the next trend is, because when I wrote this book, it was the first book in keto, and they're like, wow, you saw the keto movement back in 2012, and I did, coming, and they're like, so what's the next trend coming, Jimmy? And I'm like, I'm not a soothsayer, number one, so I have no idea. But if I had to guess, I think it's personalized, customized nutrition to the individual, like you said at the very beginning of this conversation, bio-individuality. And it's a thing. And if we find out what works for us, that's what works. Like, let's stop trying to have some diet guru tell us what's the next trend, what's the big thing. It's like, no, let's work on ourselves. You figure that out.
Right. And that's what I do in my practice. And that's why I left conventional medicine. I'm like, we need to personalize nutrition. That's what I do with clients now. So people ask me, or they'll, I get messages and texts and DMs or whatever, like, how many grams of this or that do you think I should eat? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know your history. I don't know what your goals are. I don't know what your food preferences are. I don't know what makes you feel well versus unwell. I can't just throw numbers out there. I can give you some kind of guidelines, and that's in my book. I say, okay, like, these are the natural healthy fats. Pick a fat for every meal. These are the better proteins, the higher nutrition. Pick one of these proteins. If you want to add some carbohydrates, find an intact carbohydrate that's a real food. And really, let's keep it that simple. Let's start with that. Yeah. Let's keep it that simple. Let's get the processed junk out, see how you feel. And then, like, I do give carbohydrate restrictions for those who have been metabolically ill for a very long time, because they need it. I mean, they're just not metabolizing carbohydrates well, which is why they're insulin resistant and why their insulin is running high all the time. So let's give you some more restrictions. But like we were saying, like, my metabolism and my how I work is completely different how you work. So you might look at me and say, well, what do you eat from day to day? What's your fasting protocol? Well, that works for me, and I know my body, and I've not been metabolically ill before. I've struggled with my weight for some time, but I know why that was, because I was eating really stupid things, and I was eating all the time from the moment I got up. And obviously in college, you're up late, you're going to parties. I'm not going to say I wasn't, doing all of the things to trash your body. Well, obviously you're going to struggle at that point. So we definitely, we need to personalize nutrition, and all of these umbrella terms and all of these umbrella approaches for disease states have just got to go.
If you get nothing else out of this interview today on both of our shows, eat for you, do you. Like, don't try to listen to some guru. Guys, Shana Hussin, go check her out over on Instagram, shana.hussin.rdn, and lots of things. You've got a little link there to learn about all of your books and everything that you do. So thank you for being here today on my show, and if you want to close out your show, we'll end this thing.
My pleasure. Where can we find you, Jimmy?
I'm at LLVLC.com, Living Low Carb Man, all over social media. I do so much stuff. I'm passionate about this, 17 years and counting. So I love every minute of what I get to do. And how do we find you?
I am at fasttoheal.info is my website. And you can find, if you want to work with me individually, you can sign up there. I'm at shana.hussin.rdn on Instagram, and my Facebook page is called Fast to Heal, and I have a support group called Fast to Heal Nutrition Support. I moderate that myself, so if you want to become part of that community, I would love to have you.
Excellent. Was this fun, Shana? Is it
nice
doing
so fun.
So,
I wish you could. I wish the listeners could have seen my face when I actually I have a recording of it, because I figured out how to record everything.
I'll try to reenact it.
I think it was more like this. You won't believe what I just did.
It was, but
And then I
you,
thought I had to run to the bathroom, but I didn't. So we stuck with
that's fine.
it. And Jimmy, you're so gracious for having me and giving me one more try. I really appreciate you.
This is what I appreciate you too. Thank you for that. And we have a whole lot in common, nutritionally speaking. We're on the same page. So I love when I find people that are friends in that way, that we're all trying to get that message out there. So thank you for your work. And again, thank you for having me on your show. And I look forward to getting this out there. This was fun.
Bye, Jimmy.